Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Tamlyn and this is Sewn on the Tyne, and I'm here today to reveal my collaboration with Jess from So What If I Sew and also do a pattern review of the Shay Dress by Chalk Notch. So if you've been watching me for a while, you'll know that the Shay Dress has been on my to sew list for around a year now. I loved one version of this dress when it was first released and I immediately bought the pattern. I wanted to sew it up. I had the perfect fabric which I'd received in a Sew Hayley Jane subscription box and they were a match made in heaven. I cut out my pattern, I cut out my fabric, and then nothing happened with it for months and months. It just got bumped down further and further on my sewing queue. But I discovered this year that Jess from So What If I Sew also wanted to sew the Shay Dress and a collaboration was born. So we decided to sew it up together, and it was around June that we both had time to get this sewn up. So here we are. We released planning videos, which I will link to down below if you want to go back and see what our plans were. But today I'm going to talk you through my version of the Shay Dress, my thoughts on the pattern, and yeah, I hope you're really excited to see it. So let's talk about the pattern first of all. So the Shay Dress is a maxi dress with a wide scoop neck, as you can see here, and it's got a fitted bodice. The skirt has got 3 gathered tiers. Then you can either go for elbow length puff sleeves or you can go for a tank option, which you can see that I've gone for. Then view A has got a centre back zipper and view B has got a button down front, which is the option that I went for. The pattern itself comes in both PDF and paper format. If you're in the UK, you'd be looking at paying around £20 to £22 for the paper pattern. I think the PDF you'll be paying around £14 to £15 for, but then you would need to get that printed as well. The sizing on the pattern goes from a 0 to a 30, and within that there are 4 different bust cup options, which is fantastic. Just for reference, the waist measurement on a size 0 is 25 inches and the waist measurement on the size 30 is 49 inches. But I will leave a link to the pattern down below and you can go and have a good look at the size chart if you're interested in sewing this pattern. If you do purchase the PDF version of this pattern, which I did, then it comes as both US letter and A4 versions, or it comes as an A0 or a US copy shop version that you can send off to be printed. It also has the layers function, which is fantastic and all patterns should have, which means that you don't need to print out all of the sizes. So the reason that I fell in love with this dress was the pattern images for view B. I just absolutely love the stock photos, and we'll pop a couple in here so you can see it and see why I just fell in love with it, and I knew that was very much my style. The version with the sleeves wasn't for me. I'm sure that will suit a lot of people, but it just isn't my sort of thing. But the tank version absolutely is. Now, within the instructions, it tells you how much fabric you will need. And for the size that I made, which was a size 10, it said that I would need 3.2 meters of fabric. I only had 2.5 meters of fabric and I got this out of that amount of fabric. I barely had anything left. It was tiny scraps, but I did manage to get it out of 2.5 meters. So let's talk sizing then, because I just mentioned it there. So as I mentioned earlier, I actually cut this pattern out in July last year, a whole year ago. And at that time, I wrote my measurements down on the pattern. I measured myself, which I do before every single new project. I always take my measurements again, and I would highly recommend you doing that. So I did that, I made a note of my measurements, and I pretty much fell within a size 10 at that point. So that's the size I cut out, and I cut my fabric out as well at that time. I then put it into a project bag and there it stayed for months and months and months. So when it came to the start of June and I actually wanted to crack on and get this sewn up, I took my measurements again and I now fall in a size 8. So my measurements have gone down since I cut out the pattern and the fabric. So I had a little bit of a dilemma because the style of the dress, the bodice is really fitted. Some patterns I probably could have got away with just not worrying about it and just going ahead like if it was a t-shirt or more of a loose fitting garment, but it's a really fitted bodice. So I had this dilemma of I've cut out all of my pieces, and there's a lot of pieces to this dress because the bodice itself has princess seams and it's fully lined. So I didn't know what to do. Did I want to recut my pieces, so just trim them all down to a size 8 and do the same with my fabric? But I just decided that would be a bit of a palaver, so I thought I could just go ahead and make the size 10 and just tweak the fit as I went along. Well, because of the way that the bodice is constructed and it's all princess seamed and then it's fully lined, it's quite tricky to kind of tweak the fit as you go, because until it's all constructed you can't really see if it's going to fit really well, if that makes sense. Or I couldn't anyway. I have been sewing for 5 years now, but I wouldn't say that I have a lot of experience with fit and tweaking fit and knowing when to change something and how to change something. I don't tend to veer very much from the sizing in a pattern, or I don't tend to make changes. I tend to just usually fit into a size bracket or grade between 2 sizes, and that's about it in terms of how I adjust patterns to fit me. So yeah, perhaps if it was somebody with a bit more experience, they could have sewn this up and tweaked it as they went, but I didn't have that experience. So I ended up constructing the whole bodice and then just constructing the whole dress in the size 10, and it got to the point where you had to attach the button plackets at the front, so it was pretty much, I was nearly at the end, and I tried it on and I just thought, I sort of imagined where the button plackets would be and where they would fall, and I just thought there was going to be too much room in the bodice of this dress. So at that point I thought, what can I do? One thought was to take a bigger seam allowance on the button plackets. However, the button plackets on this pattern are quite narrow already, and I thought if I take a larger seam allowance, they're going to be even narrower and barely fit a buttonhole and a button on. So that wasn't really an option. So what I actually decided to do was go a little bit rogue. And I got out my quilting ruler and rotary cutter. And I basically, off the front of each side, like the center front of each side, sliced a big slice off. Now I wouldn't recommend this. However, I'm glad I did it, because although the fit still is a little bit loose, it would have been really loose and I wouldn't have been happy with it. It's actually wearable now as it is, and it did work. So I think I took off 1/2 inch off each side and then I attached my button plackets and went ahead and finished off the dress. So yeah, a little bit of a rogue thing to do, but hey ho. Tell me in the comments down below if you've ever done anything like that. You know, is it just me, or do we all go a little bit rogue sometimes? I'd love to hear from you. So yes, I did allude to it there, that definitely the bodice isn't as fitted as I would like it to be, but I have no one to blame for that other than myself. This is a lesson in not cutting something out and then leaving it months and months, because our shapes change, our size change. You know, don't do that. But also within the pattern instructions, there are 3 amazing pages of advice and tips and guidance on fitting. And one of the pointers within those 3 pages is a little section on sewing a test version of the bodice. I should have done that, shouldn't I? I should have just sewn a test version and then I would have known the tweaks that I needed to make. But this is where I don't, so I'm not going to make excuses while I am. So I don't have huge amounts of time to sew. I have very little snippets here and there. And I don't tend to sew a lot of involved makes. A lot of makes involve quite a lot of processes and a lot of time. I prefer quick wins, things that come together a little bit more easily and a bit quicker. That's what suits my lifestyle and what suits my sewing practice as is at the moment with a young child. I have an almost 4-year-old, for those of you that don't know. He'll be 4 on Monday. So I don't tend to do things like toiles, practice versions, test versions, and therefore I can't really complain, can I, if then the finished garment doesn't fit me as well as I would like it to. This dress is very wearable and I will wear it, absolutely. but I would like the bodice to be a little bit more fitted. So should I stand up and show you my dress? I've talked about it lots. Should I just stand up and show you it? So. So what do you think? I really like it. I love the fabric. So in terms of fabric, it's designed for woven fabric, so things with drape, nice and lightweight fabrics. I went for a viscose twill, which is just beautiful. The colours in it are amazing. I love the body that a viscose twill has compared to just a standard viscose. And it is perfect for this pattern, it really is. It frayed like crazy when I was sewing it, but I do love it. I have finished my seams on the inside with my overlocker, by the way. The bodice is fully lined and I've just used a plain black cotton poplin for that, which obviously has a little bit more body than the viscose twill, a little bit more structure. And I really like that. I think it gives it a really nice sort of weight to the bodice, and I like that it's a bit more structured up here and then the gathered tiers are nice and flowy. The buttons that I've used are from Pigeon Wishes and they're just beautiful. I think they pick out the colours in the dress really beautifully. I can't remember how many buttonholes I've done, but then there was a certain point where I stopped doing buttonholes and then I just stitched the buttons through, because you only need to undo maybe 5 buttons, I think, for me. And then I can get the dress on without actually having to undo any more buttonholes. So I didn't do as many as I had to, because why would I? The buttonholes actually worked really well. And one thing I've noticed, which is strange and it's never happened to me before. So I have a buttonhole foot on my machine. You put the actual button into the buttonhole foot and it measures the buttonhole for you. These are actually quite tight, so when I go to undo or fasten my buttons, it's quite a squeeze, and I've never had that before where it's not tricky, but they don't open and close as easy as usual. So I don't know if something's happened when I was putting my buttonholes in where they haven't quite made them as big as they're supposed to, or maybe I haven't opened them out as much as I need to, possibly because the thread I used for my buttonholes is black and the fabric background is black, so maybe I'm not opening them up as much as I should, possibly. When I was showing you my dress there when I stood up, I was sort of highlighting some of the areas where it's not as fitted as I would like. So if you just sort of see here, we've got a bit of excess fabric here which could be brought in a little bit. Is it hollow chested, where you can just see that's completely flat to this point, and then I've got my breasts there. Sorry to just highlight that, but I don't have a very large chest. I've got a strapless bra on at the moment, but I don't have anything sort of here, so I feel like there's a little bit of excess fabric there as well. But like I said, all of the information was in the booklet as to how to do a test version of the bodice and how to make changes to it. I just didn't leave myself enough time to actually take the time to do all of that fit work. And like I was saying before, that's to do with my lifestyle and how much time I actually have to sew and how much time I have to dedicate to a project, and I need to realise that, I think, and work with that. The instructions themselves for sewing up this pattern are fantastic. I love the fact that there are 2 separate sets of instructions for view A and view B, rather than you having to dot around, now skip to step such and such if you're sewing view A, but do this step if you're doing view B. I like that it's 2 completely different sets of instructions. There's also an abbreviated set of instructions for each view, so if you're a more experienced sewist and you don't want all of the detail, you can just use the abbreviated list, which I think is really fantastic. On the Chalk Notch website, there is also an amazing step-by-step sew along with photographs and advice and extras. I didn't look at that in advance of sewing this up, to be honest. Again, a time thing, but I think having that resource there is really fantastic. So, would I sew this dress again? My answer is no. I don't think I would sew this dress again. Not because I don't love it, because I actually do, and I think I will wear this quite often. Obviously, it's quite a fancy dress, but it can be dressed up or dressed down, I think. I don't think I need another dress of this style in my wardrobe. It's not something I'd wear every single day. Like my saltwater slips I find really versatile, so that's a Friday Pattern Company pattern. I love those because you can layer them over things. I don't think I'd put anything underneath this, although a little black t-shirt might look quite cute. But I don't think I'd wear this in the winter, for example, with a long sleeve top and tights underneath. I don't think that would be a look that I would like. So I don't think I would sew this again. Also, it's quite involved. There's a lot of gathering, and gathering is probably my least favourite sewing process of all. Tell me what yours is in the comments, I'd love to hear. But I really dislike gathering. No method I've tried so far has made it particularly easy. Maybe just getting somebody else to do it for me would be the trick. But I find it really boring, and there's obviously a lot of gathering because there's 3 gathered tiers on this dress. So it's very involved in that sense. The bodice is fully lined and it's princess seamed, so that's quite involved. And then you've got all of the buttonholes and buttons as well. So there's a lot of processes in this dress. It's not a quick sew, it's not a quick win. For those reasons, I don't think I'd sew another one. However, I actually do really like it, and I'm glad I've tried something a little bit different rather than always sticking to my safe choices. It's quite difficult for me to say in terms of sizing whether this is true to size because of the slightly rogue alteration that I did, so I can't really say go with your measurements or whatever, but there are detailed finished garment measurements, so I would just recommend taking your measurements before you cut this out, and definitely sew up a test version of the bodice as recommended in the pattern. I can't wait to go across to Jess's channel and see Jess's version of the Shay and see how she found sewing this up. I'm really intrigued. I've seen a couple of little sneak peeks over on Instagram, and from what I can see, she looks amazing in it. So thank you, Jess, for collaborating with me again. I've loved it. And I hope you have all enjoyed seeing both mine and Jess's versions and our thoughts on this pattern. Have you sewn the Shay dress? Would you like to sew the Shay dress? Do have a little chat with us down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you think of my version. Be kind, please. But yes, I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you aren't already a subscriber, please do join us here on this channel and give the video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. I hope you're all doing really well, and I'll see you again soon in my next video. Happy sewing. Bye. And it was around June time that we had both view A and view would you like to this is a really tricky sentence.